practicing. You're not doing what you call lifting the scab.
Right.
You're just showing a few exceptional others, and you study them as so-called role models, but you sort of neglect the fact that they were associated with many more like themselves. You see them, in fact, as exceptions to their kind, and therefore worth studying. That's, in a way, great. You may study Black History Month. I don't want to write it off, but it doesn't do the conceptual work that you're talking about, which involves the pain. Phase 3, you get into issues of racism and sexism. And at that point, you learn about slaveholding founding fathers. At that point, you learn about how there was a wholeness of Indian communities here that ended when the so-called settlers, who were really the invaders, began to take over the land from people who never considered they owned land anyway. We can't even conceive the differences. Now, phase 3 brings you into issues and ugliness and rape and pillage and violence and stealing and invasion and violation of all kinds. However, you may not agree with this, but I believe that if you stop there, what you've done is sort of play into the hands of those at the top, because you've conceded that they're top, and then there's this so-called bottom. So you've got a winners, losers, these won and these lost, and that perpetuates the view that whole groups of people have nothing but a deficit identity. That is, a name of a deficit identity. What I mean is, you're teaching that they're the haves and the have-nots, and all the have-nots have is that they don't have. That, I think, is damaging to the psyche of the children in the have-not groups, and it's also damaging to the children in school who are sitting there coming off white male Anglo-European entitlement. It's bad for both.
Some might argue that this kind of information could really spell the collapse of many institutions as we know them on this planet, or at least questioning and beginning to think about taking down or dismantling many systems and many nations in this country.
Well, we have to pursue the truth where the truth will lead us. If the truth about the African foundation of human experience cause us to look anew and make revisions and changes, then I think that's a benefit. For example, we are now in the midst of a frenzy around the Christopher Columbus phenomenon. Billions are going to be spent raising up this white hero, Christopher Columbus. And this is typical of what we're talking about. The history that we've inherited from the European experience is what we call his story, the story of rich white men with property. Columbus is a perfect example. In 92 and in preparation for 92, there are going to be worldwide celebrations. But who was Columbus? As scholars, as teachers, as seekers of the truth, we have to deal with the reality of what Columbus really was and what he really was. For one thing, he didn't discover anything. He traveled across the ocean several times and he was lost, never knew where he was. He thought he was somewhere near Japan. And what was wrought by these so-called discoveries? The destruction of the Native American population, because he immediately took back many of them for enslavement to Spain, because he couldn't find the golds and riches that he was looking for. So the destruction of the Native American population, and after that the destruction of the African population, is what was wrought by Columbus. We have an obligation to raise that truth and expose this sordid lie, this monstrous lie. Others are committed to maintaining it, and there will be a conflict. But if the truth raised around Columbus can cause a dismantling of this farce, then I think we have an obligation to pursue that truth.
Is it possible that the balance of power hangs in the offing here? That there may be a shift ultimately in the balance of power globally if there is a shift in information?
I do not see why there should be such fears, because that is something so far removed from the present moment. I see a movement to a different kind of human being possible as a result of interpenetration of cultures. I don't feel that you have to lose. You see, this is a fear on both sides. Some people fear you would lose your special Africanness, or your special Jewishness, or your special Europeanness, because you embrace a plural culture. That is not so. You have a pride and a special connection to your family. That does not mean you ignore the world or that you cannot enter the world. A strong family enters the world with special advantages.
Nations have been formed on questionable terms. If those questions are raised, is it not possible that the balance of power in these nations that have been formed may change?
You will get a new order, and where there are losses, there will be gains. The gain is a different human person.
While not a stranger to controversy, the tempest that has gripped his life and career lately has alternately threatened to bring an end to both. He talks to us today for the first time since the airing of a speech that has made him arguably the most embattled academic in America. Sadly, we must also take this opportunity to note the passing of another man for whom both history and controversy played roles in his brilliant life. Alex Haley, a writer, interviewer, and researcher of stellar magnitude. He helped redeem the lives of African Americans by seeking the origins of his own African family. Roots changed the image of the African's experience in this country for both black and white America. He also gave new generations of young people a potent cultural icon as author of the autobiography of Malcolm X. And though he leaves us, we can be comforted in the thought that he has finally reunited with the ancestors that he labored so intensely to discover.
The mail I get, for the most part, say from black people, says, "Thank you for our history," or something of that nature. The mail I get from white people, which is far more voluminous, the mail really kind of reflects the population average, says things sort of like, I hadn't known, I had never realized. Some people say, I will never feel the same as I previously did about black people. A great many say that. And then the people white who write generally will say, reading Roots has started me thinking about our family. And they will often tell me something about where their family came from. So it would appear from this mail, and similar things are said to me directly when I'm moving around in airports, hotels, or wherever. It would say that people at least have been caused to give more thought to this than previously. And that is the first stage of change, is for people of their own volition within their interior selves to begin thinking, considering, weighing something that previously they had simply been fairly set about. This is simply my version based upon my research with what I took to be my own rational and more or less, hopefully, not too partial perspective, although obviously my perspective had to be partial in one sense because I am black and I was writing about my family, which also happens to be black, and which also happens to be part of a people who happen to be black, and because I was very upset, in a sense, with the image of us which had been portrayed previously. Say, ancestrally, our image was Tarzan and Jungle Jim. That was the image of Africa we all grew up with. Or in this country, the image of this shuffling, stupid slave, in the fields, dancing with benevolent master and some maybe vicious overseers somewhere in the periphery. And I just wanted to come a little bit more to grips with it. That's all.